Hello, 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 and welcome to the College of Creation. My name is Dan.
And my name is Michael.
And our friend joining us here today is 7thMastery. Say hello, how are you?
Hello, and how are you? Oh, wait. You're supposed to say that
Excellent.
to me. I'm great.
That'll work.
Man, we are so happy to have you today. This is quite the occasion.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I don't get to jam with people who are on the, let's call it, fun side of creative, content. Like, a lot of times I deal with a lot of people who are very professional, like, in terms of, like, industry people, WotC, I've worked with Paizo, I've worked with people like that. And so, like, to kind of get down in the trenches with people who are more like me, who are, shooting stuff off the cuff, working and workshopping it with their gaming groups, and actually, like, the distinction between homebrew and quote unquote third party content, for instance, and where that line goes. And I feel like you guys are kind of on the cusp, because I think you do release some stuff that's very professional quality. I've definitely seen a ton of Michael's stuff that's super good. And then sometimes you can just kind of make something and go with it and see what happens, and that organic thing is amazing. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we are the most unprofessional around here, as it is, I think.
I certainly didn't mean it to sound that way, but I mean, there is something to be said for the enthusiast verging on that cusp is beautiful, because if you go too far across that, you end up in that space where suddenly it's work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For those of us who are listening, who might not know you or what you do, your background or everything like that, please introduce yourself. Tell us, what are you all about?
What am I all about? Well, most people who know me currently know me from TikTok, and I do Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering content on TikTok. Usually short form D&D advice videos, and then I stream Magic, and we do kind of a chat just about general nerd stuff. I try to also get other creators like kind of featured and introduced to each other. Anything from dice makers to, DM advice people to other Magic streamers. I learned to read playing D&D. Like, literally, before I went to kindergarten, I played D&D with my brothers because they didn't have a cleric. And so I learned to read from that, and I have followed the lore my entire life because of that. And always have kind of watched the lore, try to follow the mechanics and the addition changes and the evolution of the game, and then WotC's purchase of TSR, et cetera, right? That all had very interesting lore implications. And one of the most fascinating things, if you're familiar with the origin of D&D, you have like the known world, Mystara, you have your Greyhawk, you have your Blackmoor. Those were kind of your three. It's sort of ambiguous exactly where they all came up, but Mystara, being one of the earliest campaign settings, has been retroactively turned into a Magic the Gathering setting, and a lot of people don't know this. Ixalan, the Mesoamerican themed setting, is actually Mystara. And it's in the lens of 5th edition representing the context of old D&D worlds as an alternate reality. I don't know how much you know about any of this either, because you're probably more homebrewers like me, but I love the backdrop, right? The backdrop of the multiverse of Dungeons & Dragons just saves you so much prep time, because if you can connect to it, then you've got all that stuff to just kind of pull from and just yank it back into your game.
Mm-hmm.
But all that come to say, Magic the Gathering canonically is now Dungeons & Dragons, and they are literally the same multiverse, and they connect there. And so it's weird for a lot of people who are like, one way or the other way, and I'm like, no, you're both ways, you just don't realize it.
I think it's been maybe 10 years, probably closer at this point to like 15 years since I played Magic the Gathering, but I never super got into the lore parts of that in a similar way to I am not quite as well versed on the wider portions of D&D lore either. At least not to the really granular extent that I know a lot of people are. But what I think is very cool about what you're talking about, that crossover and the way that these things are interconnected and the way that they are recursive, in their iterations over these various games and the various editions of these games, is that you're using that as a way of a touch point to bring people in, right? And a way to bring more depth to the experience of it. I feel like so often lore and lore preciousness about lore can be a really gatekeepy kind of thing. Like, if you don't know all of these like little things, you're, are you a real fan, or like you don't really understand it to the way that I do. But to acknowledge and understand that it's so vast and it's so rich, and that it interconnects with all of these different pieces of the hobby, is an opportunity to open it up to new ways to experience each different part of it. I think that's so cool and so great.
I'm curious to hear more about your worlds as we do this, and obviously we could talk more about stuff. Like, are we going to jump right into the subclass creation stuff, or? Oh, I didn't ask the icebreaker. I should ask that. Let's ask that. Is being a dungeon master work?
This is a very interesting question. And I think Michael and I approach this from very different places, because I do, for hire GMing or professional GMing, really whatever way you want to call it. I don't have a preferred term. I know some people prefer one or the other, but like I run paid sessions. So I feel like I have a very different perspective on it than Michael, who does it for friends and exclusively. And I also do it for friends, but I do it on a volunteer base, I've done it on a volunteer basis for local library. I have done it to get paid by local library. So I need to think about this for a minute. Michael, talk while I stall.
Yeah, the answer to this is always going to be complex. And the great thing about a question like this is any DM you ask is going to give you a slightly different answer, which speaks to the richness of the medium at large, right? I think that for me personally, most of the time it is not. Just because I am very interested in what I'm doing. Most of what I do is improvisational and collaborative with my players or with other creators, and that's what really drives me. I think that anytime my well is dry, I can record an episode of this podcast or talk to one of my players or play a one-on-one improvised game, and it fills back up so quickly. I don't know if I've ever experienced a legitimate burnout for very long. So I don't think that it's ever felt like work. I think maybe there are specific situations that are a little bit more arduous, where I have to make like an Excel document for a shop or something. So I would say no on the whole for me.
I think for me, I don't know if I would say it is work. I would say it takes work. It takes time and energy and effort, and sometimes like planning with specific tasks involved, whether that's making maps, whether that's, writing out the details of various NPC relationships and the ways that the world works. But I think it takes work for me, and I think, from a professional standpoint in terms of that, I think I put more of that energy and time towards those games, and it's focused in a different direction slightly. It's focused in the optimization of the experience for the goals of that experience. But I don't know. It's not laborious. I will say that. Right.
That's a good way to put it.
It takes work, but often I agree with Michael that it doesn't. It is something that I do with great joy, and so it doesn't feel like it is a weight of effort and labor. What's your perspective? What's the take from 7th Mastery?
I have a clarifying question for you, just because I had somebody in my chat ask. You said you are a paid dungeon master, just to be clear.
Yes, I do some of that. Not a ton. It's not something that takes up every single weekday or anything like that. It's at this point it's only a handful of games that I run regularly. And I also run for a local library, and they pay me for that time as well.
Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah.
So like it's interesting because you're still saying though that it doesn't necessarily feel like work even though you're being compensated sometimes, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
I just gotta wonder because here we are, all three of us are bringing these subclasses today, and that is definitely work, right? But
Yeah.
we're doing it from a place of joy and creation and maybe a little goofiness. I struggle not to take myself too seriously, so that's always something I challenge myself when I'm doing creations like this, especially in a more casual environment, to maybe not be super edgelord, super like intense in world. It has to totally fit my narratives.
I tell you
You're
what,
speaking straight to my heart right
Michael is so good at that. Michael from the word go on this show was inspiring me to just let it be fun, let it be goofy when it wants to be goofy, like follow the silly urge more than following the hyper intense urge quite as often as I have a tendency to.
I've been described as hideously complicated and delightfully baroque. So
let's do it.
Not a bad thing to be at all.
I'm very excited to see where those aspects come to play in your creation today.
This is a show where each week Dan and I and 7thMastery with us this week make a new bit of homebrew. It could be anything from a subclass to an item to a spell, something that applies to D&D 5th edition. We roll on a large D20 table of random prompts that we get from our community, from each other, or from our friends. And for this week, we landed on a subclass or subclasses that were meant to be played in pairs. A subclass or subclasses that rely on each other or partnership to operate. And the three of us took that same prompt and went out into the world, created something, and brought our creations back today. We rolled earlier, and 7th, you rolled an 18 to Dan's 3 and my natural 1. So you were going first today. What did you bring to the College of Creation for us today?
So another problem I have in design is like I am okay like at starting things, but I'm really bad at stopping. So the truth of the matter is I started with a singular idea, and I actually ended up making an entire set of subclasses for the game. But we're only going to talk about two of them today because those are the two that are meant to be played together.
This is my kind of person right here. This is my stuff right here.
I definitely tried to stop myself and to de-escalate and be a little less serious. And so as I started what I wanted, because I always think there are certain classes that don't get a lot of love, and to me druids are one of them, and bards. Definitely, bards are getting better. Like there's a lot of people. Unfortunately, there is a cultural construct attached to the bards that I'm a little less excited by because of behaviors that might be a little off-putting to say a new player. But we don't have to necessarily. I don't know what age range. Are we all ages? Or are we adult?
I don't know if we've ever addressed that specifically.
Not really.
We'll just say skew to the mass audience as much as we can.
Yeah.
Well, some people like really mature themes for their bards. And so part of what I was looking at is let's be a little bit, deconstructive and get away from some of the conceits of a lot of the things we're doing and maybe take ourselves a little less seriously. So I started with these two as a pair. I called them the Heartsong Gifter and the Heartsong Echoer originally. It eventually became the Heartsong Caroler because we did start pulling in some holiday energy. Which is why the PDF that you'll see has mistletoe in the background. But the idea being that there was a gift giver and then somebody who kind of was a collaborator and a synergist, right? So the druid, I think, is kind of the heart of it. I love Circle of the Moon Druid so much.
Yeah.
And I will say I did design these with 2024 in mind because that's the new hotness. It would be very easy to retro mod this back to 2014, and I can easily talk about that. And when I release this, again, I'll probably include both. But can talk about how people find stuff at the end.
Yeah.
So the druid's principal concept here is, what if wild shape, but as a present? So I give my wild shape to other people. And so I called it Shape of the Heart, and the idea is that you're granting a bestial form to your allies. I also like the idea that you're like listening to the song of their heart and awakening it. So they wild shape, but they only wild shape into one thing. If you're listening to the song of your ally's heart or whatever. And I would hope there'd be a little above table collaboration. You could play this as somebody inflicting something on someone. I don't like that vibe. But here's the thing I adore about the idea. The more I got into the weeds with it, because of course I did, was the idea that this druid might be able to hear the parts of yourself that you have a hard time hearing. And so, like, maybe your barbarian player has been playing as barbarian for 14 levels. He's just freaking tired of it. And you join the party with this new thing. You're walking in and saying, well, I listen to your heart, and I actually hear, the hoot of the nighttime owl, and suddenly you wild shape that person into an owl, and they get to be a stealth character while they're wild shaped, and they have flight and silence and all these things that they don't normally get to play with. Whereas on the flip side, your little mousy halfling rogue might be the one that has the heart of the lion or the bear and turns into the big bestial thing and gets to be a melee frontliner.
I love
And
this.
you can totally swap the party dynamics and still have the same characters, right? And it creates like a lot of role playing moments, kind of getting into the animal nature of the being. I'm not going to try to be appropriative about spiritual traditions from our real world, but the idea that someone could listen to their heart and like awaken to this new thing, which I really really liked. And then so I really kind of made this lockstep with Circle the Moon as much as I could. So I went with the augmentations that Circle the Moon gets for the self on other people. So like it gets better and better forms for the other people. You get some spells you can cast. I did basically kind of included a reach effect, reach spell. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically where like you can cast on your wild shaped ally as though you're touching them all the time, as long as you're within 60 feet of you. So like
Amazing.
You start to become the gas tank for your now. You wake up the bear inside your halfling rogue. She's up there frontlining, and now you're healing her from a safer distance, right?
Great.
And kind of running support off of her, which I really really liked. And then it kind of went with that beyond into like eventually you get the ability because in Circle of the Moon you can teleport in areas of moonlight. I thought it made sense to be able to pull yourself to and from your wild shaped ally. So there's kind of a similar teleport effect there, but it's more about coming and going and getting close to do a thing or whatever. And then eventually the ability is to add a second wild shape, so you can have two allies changed at the same time. And then I called it Heart Rage form, which was like Circle of the Moon gets like a big damage buff at the end. And so I was like, well, we'll kind of make this like the really like high damage output wild shape for your allies. But so that was kind of the meat of this pairing. But then I put the Caroler in there because I love if I could have anything. If you know me from like streaming Final Fantasy, for instance, if I'm left to my own devices, I play blue mages. I play people that can echo and copy abilities. I love characters like Rogue and Sync from the X-Men and mirror mages, et cetera, et cetera. And so I thought the idea of somebody who could copy and echo abilities and tied that to the idea of the Caroler and the idea of a round. And so like they have the ability to on long rest gain a proficiency from an ally when they start out. Called it Mockingbird's proficiency. And then caroling round, basically as soon as they see somebody cast a spell, if they have that same level spell slot or higher, they can then cast it themselves for their charisma modifier rounds. So it's kind of got a little bit of a
good.
Oh,
It's just that's just a clean good ability.
Well, and that's what we were talking about
so
the
much utility. Yeah,
because I think this is a much more complicated class, but it's super short. Because it just is like, oh, you see the thing, do the thing. You see a thing, you copy the thing. And that's what at 6th level it gets Echoing Carol, which is the ability. I added specifically Wild Shape into it in addition to spells. But basically you can like copy paste effects from an ally onto another ally. And obviously the true pairing would be to give the druid back their wild shape. And
sure,
so,
yeah.
Like, you would then both be cruising around in animal mode doing animal things. Kicking ass. And I really like that idea, and its ultimate at 14 is no, the whole party changes, and we all go, Velociraptor together.
Love it. I think this bard is such a cool idea, not only thematically, but I do think like all of the abilities feel really bard-like. First of all, like they feel like they're in that support space, but also in that like I don't know. There's that performative like mimicry kind of space that feels like the realm of bards for sure. I would love a character class that primarily functions on like being able to observe and mimic and copy other abilities. It doesn't necessarily have as much maybe going for itself, but you put it in the right situation and it's so much more versatile and interesting. I think that's really, really cool.
It feels like a Rising Tide character where if you were playing a 1DM, one player game, this character would be useless, right? It can do your core bard things, but the subclass may as well not be there. And then the moment you add even a single other character, the Rising Tide lifts all boats, right? It makes the party that much stronger the more people you add in. I guess up to 5, up to the bard's charisma modifier. But Dan and I have talked several times about how difficult it is to actually fine-tune a bard subclass because there are so few features. Like really, you have 4 total, and that's not a lot of landscape to really flesh out. And this feels so complete. It feels you know exactly what this bard's job is in the party without a lot of text, like without a lot of ground actually covered in the write-up. And that's really hard to do. I love this so much.
Then again, it's like perfect jack of all trades, right? Like it is
Right.
it doesn't necessarily have a specified role, right? It can, if you have other things in the party, it can cover those same roles, right? So it's like being able to have everybody do a little bit double duty, which is great, very cool. And I love the druid being able to grant wild shape to other creatures. That feels like just a cool thing that I'm surprised doesn't really exist in the game outside of like polymorph.
Yeah, it's not
right. And to have it kind of at 3rd level would be pretty special. Like not a lot of people get it. For sure.
And I love your description of it, that like idea of the druid being the insightful one that can kind of see through into that RP space, like who your character actually is. What is the animal that can draw out something new in your character? Very, very cool.
It automatically pulls out an opportunity for an above game conversation between players. Like what do you want for your character so that I can then circle back and introduce that in game for you and our character, because our characters can have that connection and we as players can also have that connection and move forward all the better for it.
I think these above table conversations are necessary because without them it could be like, well, your inside animal's actually a mouse or something, and like it could kind of
yeah.
And I don't think that's great for player versus player vibes. I don't like that. You could possibly get some role play where you're doing it to an NPC though. Might be kind of interesting. I love a good mimic, but there are going to be people that are going to be like, I don't know. I like to be the fireball guy, and now you're casting fireball with me, and I don't like that. So I would just make sure you have that conversation first before you just kind of storm in there and do the thing. Because they're going to be people who maybe struggle a little bit with that. I think usually once people kind of understand that your character's vibe is more about highlighting their ability through your ability to make it more. But getting someone to just get there without like there's a little bit of mutual investment that has to happen, and it's not always intuitive or something that people just jump to right away. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great note. You do get a lot of players who, they want to flavor, especially their origin abilities, as something that ties to their personality, and you don't want to undercut that by having somebody else basically do. Oh, I'm just going to do the same thing. It's like, oh, this was the thing that kind of made me feel special. So, yeah, if there's boundaries that need to be drawn, definitely set those boundaries at the outset and above table for sure. But really cool stuff. I would love to see more of these.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
I love the theming. Very, very fun.
What about you, Dan?
Yes, I definitely went with a duo. I had a couple of different ideas going into this. I've actually created a subclass already for a bard that I like a lot that actually fits this prompt to a T. It functions off of bonds that you are creating with the rest of your party. So you create bonds when you finish a rest, and those bonds give you abilities for the future until you create a new specific bond. But I wanted to do something different, so I was like, okay, what could be fun? Well, what are maybe the subclasses or the classes that get power from a different source, and maybe I can create a warlock patron that's like another member of the party, or like a paladin oath is like to another member of the party. And I was hemming and hawing between too many things, and then I started watching a lot of anime again and remembered some of my favorite anime. And one of my top favorite anime of all time is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. What an incredible duo of Edward and Alphonse Elric. Edward, the creator, the sort of, let's call it what it is, artificer, and the creation of that artifice will make an artificer and a fighter. So I bring to you the fabricator and the construct.
Love it.
The relationship between creator and creation is one of life's most interesting dynamics, and never has it been more rich with meaning and complexity than when the creation has a life of its own. Through various arcane, mechanical, artistic, and scientific practices, an artificer may create a facsimile of life, so pure that it ceases to be a fabrication but becomes a companion, friend, and partner. Working together in tandem, the creator and creation can support each other's skills to achieve goals neither could reach alone. So I'm going to read through these sort of feature by feature because they parallel each other to a degree and have a lot of crossover in features. These are definitely decidedly made to be played with two characters in the party, one being the artificer and one being the fighter, and you work together and you stay together. So the fabricator starts with a feature that is almost identical to the starting third level feature of the construct, which is the partner construct feature, or in the case of the construct, the partner artificer feature. You have a unique bond with another creature, your partner construct or partner artificer, as the case may be, PC or PA. I couldn't come up with a C word for the other one, so it's not just two PCs. As this creature's creator or creation, as the case may be, you gain additional benefits when you work together. And so when you two roll initiative, you can choose which roll to use, and you share initiative acting simultaneously. You can occupy the same space as each other. And for the artificer, you can make any spell that you cast that targets only you also target your partner construct, as long as you are within 5 feet of each other. So that's all kinds of things. That's shield, that's fly, that's jump, that's, all this stuff. You also get your stuff like bonus proficiencies. So the artificer gains proficiency in a tool set of its choice between leatherworker's tools, mason's tools, smith tools, or woodcarver's tools. The idea here being that whatever tools you choose are the tools that your construct is sort of crafted from metal or wood or something like that. And you would work together with the other player to figure out how that manifests. And then you can also add half your proficiency bonus to strength saving throws, and the fighter gets half proficiency bonus to intelligence saving throws, and then in any skills in which your partner has proficiency. So you kind of have partial shared proficiency and help each other out in your weak points. The fabricator also gets always prepared spells. It's a standard artificer thing. These are primarily defensive or transmutation sort of things, or things that are designed to give a benefit to your partner there. Heroism, shield, arcane vigor, which is a new one that I like quite a bit. Enhance ability, Catnap, Elemental Weapon, Death Ward, Locate Creature, and Creation and Skill Empowerment. At 3rd level, the bonus that the partner construct gets is that when you are within 5 feet of your partner artificer, you can take a reaction to force an attack that would target your partner to target you instead, and if that attack misses, you can immediately make a weapon attack as part of the same reaction. So you're ideally taking blows and causing them to miss, because ideally you have a slightly higher AC and can, block and attack as a reaction. At 5th level, the Artificer powers up the Construct's strikes. So while your partner construct is within 5 feet of you, its weapon attacks deal additional force damage equal to your intelligence modifier. So you're just beefing up those strikes. And then it comes back around at 7th level with the feature for the construct subclass, that when you use your second wind feature, you can grant the same number of HP to your artificer, or they can regain a spell slot of a maximum level equal to half your proficiency bonus or lower. So you can give them a little bit of bolstering magic there to give them some spell slots or some hit points back. And then it swings back over the person getting the benefit. The next level is level 9 with the Fabricator getting the Power of the Creator feature. And you can expend a use of Flash of Genius to restore a single use of Action Surge or Second Wind to your partner construct. And the bonus feature here is that your partner construct gains an additional attunement slot that can only be used to attune to your Artificer infusions. So you get a little bit of free.
Yeah, that's awesome. Need more attunement slots. I'm surprised that we didn't get a lot more. But anyway,
I do like that. That's one of the cool things that Artificers get, is that like bonus attunement stuff. But I played around with this feature quite a bit and actually might end up changing some aspect of it, because I think one of the things that I agree with you is that like attunement slots, it would be cool for an Artificer to be able to share that wealth a little bit, because it's hard to like be the Artificer who so much of your class identity is around like creating things, and there's an urge to want to give those things to your party members to strengthen everybody, not just yourself, right? But they don't have the attunement slots for all of it. So you end up making a bunch of stuff that's just for you, because you have 6 attunement slots and everybody else only has 3. So it's like, I'm going to make a million things and it's all going to be for me. And that always felt a little bit like, I don't know why we're encouraging selfishness. Let's do something different. So I might change it to like, something allowing your fighter to just use your attunement slots somehow, but I couldn't figure out how to word it and make it make sense. So this is what it is for now. It might change.
I like it.
And then the power swings back to the construct, who gains the Mark of the Creation feature. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can mark it until the end of your partner Artificer's next turn, and it has disadvantage on saving throws against the Artificer's spells for the duration. So you're just, when you hit something, it helps both of you be a little bit more effective against that thing. And then both fighters and artificers get another feature at 15. So these two sort of work together. They're both pretty strong defensive bonuses. And it's the capstone for the artificer, but the fighter has one more. The artificer gets the Defense of the Creator feature. When you and your partner construct are forced to make a saving throw against the same effect and one of you succeeds, you can take a reaction to cause the other creature to also succeed.
Yeah, that's good.
The construct subclass gets the Fortitude of the Creation feature. Taking damage cannot break your partner artificer's concentration on spells that affect you while you are within 5 feet of each other. Additionally, if your partner artificer fails a concentration saving throw, you can expend a use of your Indomitable feature, taking a reaction as normal to cause them to succeed instead. And then finally, the fighter subclass gets the 18th level feature, Conduit Creation. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can substitute one of your extra attacks with a single cantrip from your partner artificer's prepared cantrips, and you cast this spell using your partner artificer's spell attack or spell save DC, as if they had cast it. Yeah, these two just work together. Each of their features mostly helps the other person, which I thought was an interesting way to force myself to build these two, was that most of their features don't actually directly help them, but instead help the partner, who then in turn is more empowered to help you do your
very
job
cyclical,
better.
yeah.
So it's synergistic, to use an overused corporate terminology.
I do love though that you doubled down on it. Like these classes more or less don't work without each other. And I love that. I would just make sure that like you had a sidebar somewhere by them saying you have to play these classes. I mean, you would think that people would get that from reading that, but I could see, like, for instance, and maybe this is viable if you've got that weird group where, I shouldn't say weird because it happens a lot, where you only have 3 regular players. Maybe having the DM NPC who's the construct character makes sense here, where you're throwing in that other character. The construct's not going to take a lot of dungeon master processor power to run because they're mostly going to just be fighter, and maybe you have that experience, which I really dig. But I really like the idea that you're really encouraging 2 people to play it. I've always liked that, playing with a friend or a partner or somebody and just like going ham on that. I've done some crazy builds in other game systems with that, so I love it.
I really like how each step feels very intentional for the pair. The Fabricator has a lot of stuff that directly affects how the construct can attack, but that's not just a benefit to the construct. Like every level advancement is an increase for the ability of the pair, and that's really cool. And I think difficult to do.
I really enjoyed that idea of like sometimes giving yourself additional rules, additional strictures can really help create an interesting creative framework. And this is really what I tried to do here. I really tried to make it so like each feature should benefit, the partnership, and should primarily benefit the other portion in the way that they best support you. So like most of the spells here can really help the fighter stay up, can really help the fighter avoid damage, because then avoiding damage means that, or having additional hit points or whatever it is, means that they're better off when they use that feature that pulls attacks targeting you to them, right? They're going to be able to do that more and more times because they have more and more hit points to play with for that. And they'll be able to attack again. And so when those attacks happen, they're stronger. So it just keeps sort of building, not necessarily on themselves, but on each other's features. Yeah. Building each other's towers instead of each of them building their own individual tower. But you say you made something in a similar framework. I would love to see it. What did you make?
What an episode to talk about how creative and whimsical I am as opposed to the two of you, because I certainly went very straight and narrow this time around. I focused on mechanics and not necessarily the jokey aspect of what these could be. For the first time in a long time. It's been many weeks since I've made something pretty cut and dry and serious. But I made a rogue subclass and a ranger subclass. Strange that the 3 of us picked 6 different classes without knowing.
Well done.
But I call this the Open Eye Rogue and the Deadshot Ranger. And this is based off of the concept of a sniper and their spotter. So they have to work in tandem to make sure that they are protected and can get the job done as efficiently as possible. Much like yours, Dan, this is pretty much unplayable. It's still kind of like you could do it, but there are many cross-references to each other that just don't make sense if you are playing one without the other. So they have the same first ribbon at 3rd level. It's called Tactical Rundown. For the rogue here, the open eye, your awareness is increased by operating alongside a trusted ally. Immediately after finishing a long rest, you can spend 10 minutes conferring with a Deadshot Ranger. Within 5 feet of you, this ranger becomes your active operating partner, or AOP. Until you finish another long rest, your wisdom score equals your AOP's wisdom score.
Interesting.
The idea here is you both use dexterity as your primary stat here, but the ranger will bring a high wisdom score, the rogue will bring a high intelligence score, and then you can all kind of make each other more wise and smart.
Nice.
For the rogue specifically, until you finish a long rest, your wisdom score equals your AOP's wisdom score, and the two of you are immune to the blinded condition. So neither of you can be blinded as long as you are active operating partners. And for the ranger, intelligence is shared from the rogue, of course, and the two of you can communicate telepathically out to 1,000 feet. So you have kind of a comm system of sorts, a magical comm system built in while you are operating. Hopefully you're not 1,000 feet away from each other, because that kind of defeats the purpose of this subclass. But if you are, you can, one of you goes on vacation, you can still talk to each other. At 3rd level also for the rogue, we have Spotter's Cunning. Your knack for sensing the intent of others is heightened. You gain proficiency with the insight skill, or if you're already proficient, you gain expertise, or a proficiency with another intelligence-based skill of your choice. You also have advantage on all intelligence checks made to determine whether or not a creature is hostile towards you. So you are effectively always scanning for threats, right? You are the eyes of the pair.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Intelligence or insight is wisdom, no? Insight is wisdom, my friend.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, then, yeah, that makes sense that you get that from your ranger, I guess.
Yeah, no, that tracks. That tracks. That actually works great.
No. See, this is clear evidence of right brain thinking, so it's fine. It's he uses this deeply in his creative, and binaries flip all the time in your creative space. It's fine.
Yeah.
Forever, I have thought insight was intelligence based. I think my whole time playing D&D. I don't know why I always default
I
back
could
to
give
that.
you an excuse, but you already said you don't have it, I don't think. But
No excuse. So maybe I'll just change that so you can either get expertise in insight or proficiency with an intelligence-based skill of your choice.
Yeah, that's great.
You have advantage on all wisdom insight checks made to determine whether or not a creature is hostile towards you.
Great.
Now, I don't know if I even like that feature anymore.
Well, I do.
We'll see.
So.
I like the feature.
Thank you.
I think the feature is good as a spotter, right? You are on the lookout for.
It's meant to be a maybe perception makes more sense, but I think insight for like reading, right? Like reading faces and reading intention.
Yep.
Also at 3rd level for the Deadshot, for the Ranger, we have Sniper's Mark. Choose one weapon with which you can use a mastery property. You no longer suffer from disadvantage on long-range attacks with this weapon, and the range of your Hunter's Mark spell is equal to the range of the weapon. So if you're using a longbow, you can cast Hunter's Mark out to 600 feet at that point.
Nice.
Additionally, choose one other spell from your spell list that you have prepared. That one also has that same range. So as long as it targets only one creature, you can cast that one out to the range of your weapon of your choice.
Nice.
And then this is where I really like how the Ranger and Rogue classes fit together. From here up until 17th level, there's a feature every 2 levels if you're looking at the pair. So at 7th level, we have the Ranger ability called Peripheral Cunning. You and your active operating partner can move as one. Whenever your AOP uses the dash, disengage, or hide action as part of their cunning action feature, you can use your reaction to also take one of those 3 options. And once per short or long rest, if you take this reaction, you can also take one additional reaction in the same round. So once every now and then, you can hide or run away and also give an opportunity attack or use a shield if you need to. But other than that, you can kind of move if your partner is like tapping you on the shoulder and like, all right, we gotta fall back now. let's both go together.
That's cool.
I actually really like that.
Thank you. At 9th level, for the Open Eye, we have the Tab Keeper. You're at your best while working in tandem with your AOP. Once per round, you can make a melee weapon attack towards a creature marked by your AOP's Hunter's Mark with advantage. So if they have it marked, you have advantage once per round. So there's a free sneak attack for you if you can't find one elsewhere. Additionally, you gain the following Cunning Strike effect. This is called Trace. Costs 1d6 off your sneak attack damage. You place a thermal tracker with your strike. The target can't benefit from the invisible condition for 1 hour, during which you and your active operating partner always know the direction towards the target.
Michael, this is so good. We were talking just when we did the Barbarians about some of the new 2024 features they added. In particular for Barbarians, it was Brutal Strike. And for Rogues, it's this Cunning Strike, and the new well of opportunity there is to create new options for that, new Cunning Strikes or new subclass specific options. This one is great.
Thank
you. This one rips.
Thank you. I really like it, especially with the extended range for Hunter's Mark. If you run out of time with that hour, if you feel like you need to extend it, both of you know where they are, so you have extreme range with one spell and Hunter's Mark, so you can still kind of keep tabs on them from afar. Moving up to 11th level, this is bouncing back to the Ranger, back to the Deadshot. This is called Nerve Shot. You possess debilitating ammunition for your Sniper's Mark weapon. If you hit a creature with this ammunition, and this should specify with only that weapon. I want to make sure that like the basis of this subclass is you have like a weapon that you're so familiar with that's like your deadly instrument, right? If you hit a creature with this ammunition, they are forced to make a con save. On a failure, the creature is paralyzed until the end of your next turn. On a success, they are paralyzed until the end of your current turn. So it is still tiered a little bit. So if you take your first shot with this and they still succeed, at least you have a little bit of an edge for your second shot. You have an amount of nerve shot ammunition equal to your wisdom modifier and regain all spent ammunition after you complete a long rest. Moving back to the Rogue at 13th level, we have Distant Sentry. You can assist your allies with extraordinary foresight. You can cast the Clairvoyant spell once without material components, and regain the ability to do that in this way when you finish a long rest. Taking damage can't break your concentration on this spell.
That's very cool. Doors and corners, man.
Exactly. You got to know what's coming. Know what's coming. The Ranger Capstone here, this is called Multi-Target. Tactical, this is something that we just talked about the other day when we talked about the new Ranger class, and it just happened to fit in well here. Tactical warfare has become second nature to you. Even if you have a creature already marked, you can cast Hunter's Mark on a second creature and concentrate on them both. If your concentration is broken on one creature, it does not automatically break on the second creature. So you just have two Hunter's Marked creatures, essentially, at 15th level.
Question.
Yes.
Just a clarifying question on that one. Do you get to decide if you break concentration on one instance of Hunter's Mark? Do you get to decide which creature it drops on?
That's a good question. Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe I'll stipulate a better way to choose. Maybe you drop the concentration on the one you've had the longest.
Sure. I don't know.
I'll have to think about that. I don't know which one makes more sense. I think maybe controlling that doesn't make sense. I feel like if you lose concentration, it shouldn't be your decision which one goes.
You're right. That kind of doesn't.
You
make
just
sense.
flip a coin. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
17th level for the Rogue Capstone, we have Armor Lock. As an action, you can emanate a 5-foot radius dome around yourself and one other medium or smaller creature of your choice. The dome exists for 1 minute or until you drop to 0 hit points. While it's active, you and the other creature add your intelligence modifier to your armor classes, and weapon and spell attacks passing through it are made at disadvantage. Once this feature is used, you can't do so again until you complete a long rest. Just an overshield, essentially.
Nice.
If you have no other options, you're in the heat of combat and you need to take somebody out, drop a shield and increase your armor class and decrease the ability to be hit. And that's it. So I don't dislike these. Where's the flair? You know,
I mean, it's very clean though. Like I don't. There's not like when you're talking. You definitely like have like a. Like I am not much of a shooter guy. I've been playing Rivals, which is the closest I've got to a shooter. But this very much feels like if I wanted my buddies who play Call of Duty to come play D with me, this would be like an excellent thing to give them. To be like, hey,
yeah,
you're gonna understand this intuitively. I have very strong feelings about rogues, and I think they're underpowered. So like I would probably do things to these that would make them stronger. But like within the context of the frame of the rules as they stand, I think they're great. They're very clean. They're very straightforward, and like I think would like be good intro material to people. I think for sure.
Yeah,
I think that it's flavor wise maybe not the direction that you'd normally go in, and I think maybe
yeah.
Maybe
that's what's
for
off.
you and your tastes maybe lacks a little bit of that flair. But I do think that like if you're talking about it, I think it does have a cohesive aesthetic to it. Like it feels very like these two are tactically in tandem really closely. I think that the ideas of the Sniper's Mark is very cool. It has an aspect of like almost arcane archer thing going on with the spell having that range of your arrow, right? It almost has the idea that you are shooting a spell with your weapon, right? It gives me that vibe at least. It's kind of got that like Hawkeye thing going on, but also like I think peripheral cunning is a very cool little feature, especially with it granting the bonus reaction. Like feels like, yes, we're moving tactically. That's great. Very fun. I think Tab Keeper is very cool. Both of you have a bead on somebody, right? That's good. That's a good thing that you both have now. I think that plays really nicely together. Maybe the only pieces that like, Nerve Shot feels like it works. It doesn't feel like it synergizes as cleanly with the partner portion.
I was actually going to disagree with you because with Paralysis, then
that's true.
Dead meat.
That's true. You're right.
That is sneak bait times 10. So like, yeah, I think actually it's taking account for the base abilities of the class in addition to subclass abilities, which I think there's a lot happening here, and the idea that it shares those a lot between them, I really like that. It isn't just. I think where we're losing because you're kind of feeling like it feels a little clean cut, is these make each other's classes with those shared abilities at different levels just so much more rich together that like it almost has to be clean as tight as the pair is because they're doing so much to make the base classes just that much stronger.
My original thought was to just make one subclass that you could play both as an independent subclass and also two people playing the same subclass. And originally it was just going to be a ranger subclass that could do both, like two rangers that could shoot and spot. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I need the base ranger abilities because I need Hunter's Mark, obviously. Right. And I need like things like roving, and the blind sight is super helpful at higher levels. But I also need something else. Like there has to be a secret sauce in here somewhere that makes everything blossom. And it was sneak attack and
cunning action. Yeah, and the cunning action stuff is also huge in there. Like, yeah, I think that this is really great. I actually would love to run a 2-person like mini campaign or something with just these two.
Yeah,
like like these two trying to infiltrate a place or like. Go through a set
very
series of
tactical.
It feels like an army of two. You know what I mean?
When I first had the idea, I was like, how do I turn Gears of War or Army of Two into a D&D pair. Like I really wanted it to be like Master Chief and the Arbiter from Halo 2 going in and infiltrating the giant base or something. And I think maybe I got close. I think it needs some fine tuning.
I think you landed it pretty good. I'll be honest. I think
Brought me up quite a bit.
I think the tactical synergy is actually really strong here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things that you could maybe iron out, but really, I do think that like a couple of these features are really really good. I think.
I'm also gonna say this one's one of the more interesting ones to see 4 of, because they could swap partners.
Sure. Yeah.
And you could get some very interesting things, because in the either with multi-classing or just in weapon mastery selections and different build outs, you could get pairings that would make more sense in different ways. And to me, then you have your Black Ops campaign where it's all rogues and rangers and everybody's stealth experts, and you're just running like in the shadows. And I think, especially like I am not the low magic guy, but if I'm gonna play a low magic game, it better have some tight theming like this, and I really like it. The first question I had, which was a while ago, was, okay, this is a cool idea, but what if one of the pair dies?
Well,
for both of ours, honestly, for both of ours. For mine, I am a big proponent. If I was running a game with my subclasses, I am a huge proponent of allowing my players to restructure their characters at a certain moment. A character in a campaign that I'm running died tragically in a situation that was going on. And the party did manage to bring him back. It's a fairly low magic sort of setting and world, and one that I made it like a little extra hard for them to bring him back from the dead. They didn't really have access to all the things you need. So they did bring him back, but it was with conditions. And some of those conditions was he came back with a bunch of levels of exhaustion, and also I talked to him personally and was like, how do you want to run this? Because I know you're like, you know, you might be itching to play someone else. You might be okay with this moment. You might be wanting to kind of finesse how your character comes back in and what this means for their progression. He was going to like scale back ranger classes into a bunch of druid multi-class. I think he went back and was like, I think I'm just going to go straight druid. And so I'm letting him reclass his whole self, re-choose proficiencies, and we're doing like a one-on-one play-by-post to see sort of how he comes to that place and what that looks like when he rejoins the party. So I'm very open to that kind of thing. So if like the construct died and my artifice was like, I'm not going to make another one, and you want to reclass yourself or re-subclass into something else, that's fine. And if that player wants to come back as a different class then, who was the fighter who died, or vice versa, like the construct is now like, cool, we can re-flavor, we can come up with a new thing. Maybe you now are out for vengeance, so now you just take all the vengeance palette and stuff instead. You're probably already mostly spec'd for it. Do we need to change a couple of things? Cool. But I'm very willing to like let the player decide how the death of the partner affects them.
I think for mine, it is, I suppose if it was a game that was just 2 players and a game master, which I think this is kind of like optimal for, like either 2 or 4. I think you're totally right. But if one of the pair died and it was a 2-player setting, I don't know that I would change much about the course of the game from there. It becomes more about survival. One of the things you said, Dan, a couple episodes ago, we were talking about something completely different, but it was when a player last minute couldn't make it to a session. Like, what do you do? And I think I would pull a piece of inspiration from what you said for this, actually. I would have just some stat blocks ready. That if one of the pair goes down and stays down, I have some really basic, simple stat blocks that can kind of mirror the features that you would need to make the pair work. But I would throw that to the player that goes down and say that you met this guy along the way. You can trust them or not. We're in a survival crisis game now. Player number 2 can be an ally to you. They can be an anti-hero. They can be a straight up antagonist towards you. But you're going to work together either way to get out of this situation. 'Cause I'm a big fan of games of attrition. I don't normally give my players a lot of additional resources once they're out, like in the middle of an arc. I think that would be really interesting to just make the players figure it out. And obviously I'll support them along the way, but I don't know if I would rebalance anything, actually. You're out there alone. Like once you go dark, you have to figure your own way out of it.
Something about yours in particular has that sense of like there is like a grittiness to it that like you understand going into it that like this is your partner, and if your partner goes down, like your skill set is significantly lessened. Like you are going to be underpowered for the situation because you are relying so heavily on that partnership. Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't like change any of the features at all. It's like there's enough. I think there's enough with both of them that's like it works on its own. It's not idealized on its own,
right?
But it, you can function. Some of the things are not usable anymore, but like, your nerve shot is still usable. The trace cunning strike is still available. The defensive shield is still available, but like, it's just not going to be as viable necessarily, but like that's sort of the challenge when it comes to a partner going down. And yeah, I don't know what to do about the other person. That's a table specific conversation, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe just the foundation of a partnership like this, you just have to have that trust already built in. Like you have to have a very in-depth conversation about what type of game you all want to have at your session 0. Like it's just the 3 of us. If one of us is gone, like I, the GM, am going to be playing regardless. So if one of you goes down, like we have to figure out what you want to do going on. Do you want to be a spectator? Do you want to just role play like a comms person, like back at home base? Like you're just like eyes in the sky trying to guide the sole survivor out of this situation. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah.
To have kind of like just like a handler, I guess. I don't know. I think it would come down to what the players wanted to do.
Now I'm thinking about what would be fun to write a subclass for like a remote handler who doesn't have actual physical form on the battlefield, but like can provide inspiration.
A divination wizard that just
a divination wizard or a bard or something that's like just in everybody's ears.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, take your next left. The door will be unlocked.
I am definitely the Wonder High Magic DM. So, of course, in my brain, when these people, one of them dies, the rogue becomes a phantom archetype rogue and has the ghost remnant of his ranger.
Yeah.
That's cool, too.
Yeah.
And then if the ranger is the survivor, I think the lingering bond, maybe if he died in psychic communion, maybe transfers to an animal and I have him become a beastmaster. And maybe some remnant of the rogue's psyche is projected at death into that animal or something. You kind of keep the vibe along, but the other player who's lost their character still gets to make a new character. And I don't know, it would allow some preservation of the thing. But I do from a narrative perspective, and this is where I get into that author DM head where I'm like, I like the idea of the gritty, dark survival story. I don't think most of my players would. Most of my players,
they'd have to be a very specific
they
table.
Want high
that
octane explosions behind them as they're riding out on the enchanted war goat that now like runs on a rainbow. Like that's my people.
I got some players who are into digging in the mud for a while. They're into that. But yeah, I think so cool. I would go like Swarm Keeper, Ranger.
Yeah.
But the Swarm is just like ghost.
The silhouette of the rogue is all like filled in by bugs. That'd be rad. I like it.
You could multi-class into a Hexblade Warlock, and the rogue becomes your sniper's weapon.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're just carrying around the weapon with the rogue. Like you still have like a remnant of a sneak attack, maybe a couple extra D6s here and there.
Flavor
Yeah.
your Eldritch Blast as bonus damage instead or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So many options to go with, honestly. And that's what's great about that. I don't know.
These were great. These were great. You guys made me feel so much better about about mine.
Yeah.
I loved both of yours. 3 totally different directions.
That's one of the things I like about the hobby in general is like you can give like we've done an orphan rogue game and everybody brought the most random ragtag. Everybody's supposed to be a rogue or have something and like it completely different characters. The same sort of thing. This one's like a broad. I think it's cool that we just didn't overlap and we didn't plan it. That's neat.
Wild.
Yeah.
I thought at least one class would overlap, but I'm happy that they didn't.
Yeah, same.
Very cool.
I really thought somebody else was going to overlap with me too, for sure. But yeah, this was a wonderful time. Thank you for creating with us. Thank you for being open to the experience. This was kind of
Always.
This is an intense one for your first time out with just a brand new. Here's a prompt. You have a limited amount of time to make it work.
Nah. I get it described as like talking to me about gaming is like trying to take a sip from a fire hose. That's something that's been said about me more than once. And so bring it.
Awesome. We love that attitude. We love what you brought. Before we go, would you please tell our folks listening where they can find you and the things that you make and do?
All right. You can definitely find me on TikTok at 7thMastery. You can also find me probably at Lemonade just in case something happens to TikTok. 7th Mastery pretty much across the board is where I'm at. I also run an indie publishing house called Lost Spheres Publishing. Most of the content under that imprint is for Pathfinder First Edition, but there are some 5e products as well, and a aid that I think is incredibly useful for assessing player priority when you're having your session 0. And that is free. That particular one is downloadable for free.
Before we go, one of the last things we do on every episode is roll on our table for our next prompt. 7th, would you grace us with a D20 roll to see what Dan and I will be making next week?
Sure. We've got my nice little metal die here, and it is coming up 8.
An 8. Dan, next week, you and I will be making a druid that revolves around synthetics. For example, plastics, alloys, flubber-esque. That's from Comrade Shark on the Discord.
Oh my
Nice.
goodness.
So got a sci-fi druid.
A synthetic druid.
Synthetic, like plastics, alloys,
Plastics,
flubber?
alloys, metal. Yeah. Synthetics.
Okay.
Unnatural druid.
Unnatural druid. All right.
That's
then.
wild.
I don't know what to
That's
do with
wild
that.
one.
Thank you. Catch us next time struggling through the most antithetical druid you could possibly find.
I don't know.
Certainly.
I'm old, but there's a Love and Rockets song that you can't go against nature, because if you go against nature, it's part of nature too. That's the vibe I'm getting. Like, are you actually going to be exploring the extreme of nature turning on itself? That's, I like it.
Oh, yeah.
I believe in you.
I believe in us too.
A self-consuming nature druid.
We've never fully crumbled before, so
Black blood of
true.
the earth druid. He's pumping the oil for.
a fracking druid.
Oh no!
Oh, Jesus.
Oh my goodness! Oh boy!
That was the episode where they got canceled. Anyway,
Yeah.
hopefully not.
Dan, do you have anything to say to the people before we say goodbye today?
Oh goodness! He has sprung this on me once again.
It's only like the third time.
Yeah. Usually I ask Michael if he
almost
has
40
anything to
episodes.
say to the people before we say goodbye, and Michael always invariably has some very prescient and wise word of advice to our listeners. This is related to something that 7th Mastery was talking about, your love and appreciation for Magic the Gathering. which, as I mentioned, is something that I have not engaged with heavily since high school. And I would like to encourage all of our listeners, if there's something that you remember enjoying, some like maybe nerdy activity or otherwise, countercultural or something that you took joy in your younger years that you've shied away from in adulthood because it's you think it's childish or you think it's it's moved too far beyond you, or you just think that maybe you're in a different space now in your life. Don't be afraid to go and try those things again. Don't be afraid to go and engage with those spaces because they are for you. If you want to engage with them, they are for you. And there are people in those spaces who will welcome you regardless of your experience level, regardless of how long it's been since you engaged with those things. There will be people there to welcome you, to guide you through that experience and give you more of that joy that you thought might have been lost. We're all about helping reclaim that here on the College of Creation. So I would encourage all of you to go try and recapture some of that magic, even if you think it's silly. It's not. It's an amazing, beautiful experience. So please do.
100%. Could not agree more.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, 7th. We appreciate you. Until next time, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and we will talk to you very soon next Monday. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.